Because frankly, I mean, some people are just really intent. They really want to buy a home right now, and we need to work through it. So we have created kind of 5 non-negotiables for buying real estate.
Welcome, everybody. Episode 7.
Yeah.
Harpeth Wealth Partners.
Welcome to the podcast. And we are kicking off Real Estate Month. So what that means for everybody that is a client and or inside of our financial vital signs planning program, monitoring program, we're going to be talking a lot about real estate. So we're going to try to focus either on maybe updating some data that we have on your primary or investment properties. We might have conversations about, navigating this market by and large.
Yep. It's a good time to buy, good time to sell.
Yeah. So we're really just going to have it doesn't mean we're not talking about anything else. It just means we are definitely going to stay focused heavily in the real estate atmosphere, working through that financial vital sign of RT, real estate term. So what do you do, man? The market is insane.
Especially where we're at.
You have
Nashville and Franklin.
You have wild home prices. You have kind of low inventory. Demand is through the roof. And
interest rates
are going up.
And demand is still there.
Yeah. So it's kind of nuts. I mean, it's leaving a lot of people feeling helpless, hopeless, frustrated, definitely frustrated. Mm-hmm. Sometimes even angry. On the flip side, if you're a seller, you're pretty happy and you're shocked. Yeah. You have all this, but then the question is
where do you go?
I can sell, but where am I going?
Yep.
So we're really going to kind of try to start the conversation today. We're trying to put these podcasts. Our goal is weekly podcasts. It's not always going to be every week, but the goal is weekly podcast. In addition to that, if you are part of our planning program, then you're also going to get a couple monthly private Zoom calls. And then if you're our individual one-on-one client, you're also getting those phone calls. So anything real estate, anything top of mind when it comes to real estate, either on the investment side or your personal primary residence, start thinking of those questions. If you want to have deeper conversations and you want to talk about looking at our planning program, wildly accessible, people are enjoying it immensely. To join, it's $300, and then the subscription thereafter is only $25 a month. We can explore that and teach you more about that, show you what you're getting yourself into ahead.
And that's when we get into all the details.
And that's where we'll go a lot deeper on these conversations. But for sake of everyone listening, we think we have something to teach you today, so hopefully you can tune in. We'll be showing some graphs and stuff, so if you're used to just listening to this, you might want to
check out the YouTube page.
Yeah, pay attention to the actual video, because we are going to show some graphs and some stuff to help you kind of digest this. I have a quote that I kind of picked out. When investing, pessimism is your friend, and euphoria your enemy. And that was Warren Buffett.
Sounds like Warren Buffett.
And why am I bringing that up? Because in prep for Real Estate Month, I've been having conversations with a lot of real estate people, lenders, agents, people that have done very, very well with investing in real estate. I've listened to podcasts, read white papers, looked at data on the internet. So I'm trying to get all this stuff, and it seems like one thing that I am seeing too much.
What's everybody telling you?
Is, everybody's suggesting that prices cannot come down. And throughout history, usually when experts are saying prices can't come down, it's just become, I'm not saying that they're wrong. Right. What I am saying is it makes me hesitant. Yep. It makes me at least want to do an incredible amount of research and make sure I'm applying so many fundamentals to my decision.
Right.
Because history tells us time and time again, when euphoria exists, when people are saying there's no way that this could come down, there's no way your decision could fail, there's too much euphoria.
And every market has a cycle.
Yeah.
And you have your expansions and contractions. Euphoria is at the top of the expansion.
And we're not and truthfully, I'm in the camp. Like, it's hard to believe, it's hard to see a scenario where prices do regulate or come down. It's really hard to get there. There's a lot of people that I have a ton of respect for that are very conservative, that are very good at applying due diligence to their forecast and things, that are also saying prices aren't going to come down anytime soon. So I'm not saying that they're wrong, and I'm not trying to say that we're on the but
we also
crash.
live in Nashville, so it's a little bit this market here is just a little bit.
It's everywhere
different.
though. It's
everywhere. It is everywhere.
It's
everywhere.
everywhere.
I feel like we're
I just
getting
think
a lot of it here.
I think that there's so much that goes into this consideration, and it just makes me nervous that everybody's suggesting that we're in a position where you just can't make a bad decision. Just go purchase the property. Yep. So we're actually not in the camp of some doomsday scenario, but we're also saying it's important to think through these decisions fundamentally because we are in an insane market. Mm-hmm. So just a couple stats that we pulled to quantify the insanity that exists. If you're buying a home, if you're buying a primary residence, chances are this is going to be one of the most sizable pieces to your net worth over the next 30 years, right? It's one of the biggest, one of the largest purchases that we make in our lifetime. Huge impact to us throughout the rest of it. It starts us off, most people buy, first-time home buyers most of the time are in their 30s. They're about on an average. By the time, they're 60, maybe they're on their second or third property, but that property has a ton of equity in it. All that said, this is huge. It's a huge decision. In February, 23% of home buyers waived their appraisal and or waived an inspection.
Which is a much higher number than I thought when we originally looked this up.
It's insane. It's insane for a couple reasons. If I'm waiving my appraisal, it means that I'm buying something that I have no idea how much it's actually worth. If somebody came up, if I was on the street and I had a little stand where I was selling stuff and I could just take anything I want and apply whatever price tag I wanted, but there was enough euphoria around me selling things that you'd come up and just say, hey, what's the price? Sure, I'll take it. You're literally just taking an agent and a seller at their word for what their property's worth with very little due diligence if you're waiving that appraisal process. And we're in a market where you might be buying a house for more than the appraised value. And we're not saying that's good or bad. We're saying you should at least know.
Yeah.
You should be making a well-informed, intelligent, data-driven decision when it comes to buying your home. And if you're going to spend $600,000 on a $550,000 home, fine. If that's what you choose to do and you apply some of our non-negotiables here, if that's what the market's telling you that you have to do, maybe you go for it. But at least that you're buying $600,000. You're paying $600,000 for a $550,000 home, because that's going to inform a lot of our non-negotiable steps here. The other thing is waiving an inspection.
That blows my mind.
You have no idea what you're buying. If you cannot see,
there's so many bad things that can happen.
You can't see your foundation.
Yep.
You probably don't know how to inspect the wiring. You don't know for sure if things are up to code.
Yep.
There's you could be buying a money trap.
Mm-hmm.
You could be buying something
upside
that is
down
just
before you know it.
Yeah, you just bought you paid $600,000 for a $550,000 home, and all of a sudden
it needs $250,000
your foundation's cracked, your roof is caving in.
Yep.
Man, that is a scary, scary situation to be in. And 23% of people open themselves up. Yeah. My brother was just telling me this past weekend that he sold his home recently. His home was built over 100 years ago. It's a farmhouse up in Indiana, and the buyer waived the inspection on a house that is over 100 years old. I mean, 100 plus. I mean, there's solid chance there might be some lead paint, some asbestos.
There's
Who
definitely
knows?
lead paint.
Like, it's over 100 years old.
Yeah,
and
even if it was remodeled, which I'm sure your brother did some remodels to it and upgrades, but there's a lot of things that can be hiding in the walls of a house that old.
Waived inspection, yeah. That's insane to me. So 23%, that's a crazy stat. And you might be thinking, well, that's just what the market's necessitating. We're going to talk a little bit about that in one of our non-negotiables. I think there's some maneuver space in there. Mm-hmm. So that's coming up in a second. We'll expand on that. But
go over the 50-year stat.
Let's look at some stats. So I have here two charts that I've looked at. I pulled this off of the Fred website, which is the St. Louis arm of the Federal Reserve. So the past 2 years, 2021, 2022, have been some it's an anomaly.
Right.
Like, what's going on is insane. So it's this hockey stick coming at the end of a chart. You can kind of see it. And in the sense here is it's just shot straight up. Mm-hmm. So I want to start talking about some numbers with that removed. So we go back to 2020. And I collected 50 years. I used 50 years of data. So you can see in this chart here from the second quarter of 1970.
You could buy a house for $24,000.
The median price, the median price, right? $24,400. And in Q2 of 2020, the median price is $322,600. So if we look at long-term average returns, as far as like the house growing in worth, you could apply about a 5.25% interest, a 5.25% return year over year as an average. Now you can see, I mean, like, this chart's pretty small because it's 50 years worth of data, but you can see some ups and downs. You can see a little bit of a downturn right around 1991-ish. Obviously, there was some bigger downturns in 2008. So, we all know markets go up, go down, day to day sometimes. We don't get appraisers to come to our house every single day. Mm-hmm. But, house prices do fluctuate a little bit. You can look at your Zestimate nowadays and kind of see that, oh, hey, my house lost a little bit.
And one thing that stands out to me with this chart, just looking at, the 07 to 2010, that range, like all the pain that people felt during that time in 08, 09, I really thought that graph was going to be more drastic than what it's showing.
It's still showing about 20%. The reason why there was so much pain.
But when you look at that compared to what's going on now.
The inverse of it. The thing about 2007 into the 2008, 2009, 10, and 11-ish time frame for that recovery to happen, people were getting stuck because their house prices fell, and then they were getting laid off as well. So they couldn't sell their house and downsize, or sell their house and get into an apartment. They were stuck in the home and then lost their ability to pay.
And you had balloon payments.
So we talk about that too in a little bit in one of our non-negotiables. So we'll come back to that. But going back to this, 50 years, 1970 to 2020, 5.25% interest. If we do include the past 2 years and go back to 1972, so still 50 years, but the most present 50 years, now we're looking at a 5.75% rate of return. Which 0.5% may not seem like a ton, but when you're talking about aggregating 50 years of data or 50 years of time, that's a pretty substantial. That's statistically a large shift. And if we only factor in 2 years, 2021 and 2022, we're looking at about 14.15% a year, or over 30% just in the past 2 years of appreciation. Those are wild numbers. So you can kind of see On this chart here, we have long-term slow growth of 5.25%, except for the last 2 years. That's jumped up incredibly high. We also see that over the long term down here, the 30-year fixed rate mortgage interest rate has kind of gone through times of, sideways movement and then down, sideways movement and then down, sideways movement and then down. But if you look from like 2019, where we were at, through COVID to like the end of 2021, it was down to below 3.
Yeah.
Now in the past 6 months, we've gone from below 3 to really close to 6. There's been a few single days where 30-year fixed rates were over 6, like 6.1, 6.2. So it's putting a lot of pressure. Like, if you think this might continue going up, up, and up, and if you think the interest rates might continue to go up, up, and up, then you're in a hurry to buy a house if you're looking. So that's cause of concern. Another kind of data source here. One thing too, just to really quickly show you the difference between 5.75 and 5.25.
Yeah.
The blue line here shows kind of the trajectory from 1970 at about a 5.25% rate of return. So you can kind of see
if it was a straight line.
The thin blue line is the actual median home sell price, and you kind of see like we kind of went a little further away. It was a little slower, but then it caught up and we bounced off it and then went slower and then it caught up. And you kind of see where we ended up in 2020.
Yeah.
Whereas, so the trajectory, if we were able to slide this graph to the left and look out to like 2030, imagine where that price would be in 10 more years. You might be looking at somewhere around, I don't know, 425,000, somewhere in there. Whereas if we apply that 5.75% trajectory, then we're looking at where house prices are now. So the red line is 5.75.
You'll be over 500.
And you'll be well over, probably closer to 600,000, maybe 550 at least in 10 years. So though that small 0.5% over time has huge effect.
Makes a big difference.
So one thing that we could point out to, just to show you guys in dollars how this works, we took median. So again, we're going off of median sell price. The median sell price in the second quarter, so we're thinking around June of 2020, was $322,600. The interest rate in June of 2020 was 3.13%. So we're gonna keep this apples to apples. So we're just gonna assume that 100% of that median price was financed. That makes my mortgage payment $1,383 a month. Okay.
$1,383.
Yep. And if I was to keep my mortgage for 30 years, it means I'm going to pay back $322,600 for my home, and with interest included, my total mortgage would have cost me almost $498,000. Okay. So $322,000 paid total $498,000 by way of paying $1,383 a month. And
that seems doable, right?
That's great.
It seems okay.
It's really good. It's really good. Q1 of 2022. Right, so we're talking March of 2022. Most current data that the Fed has published is median home price is $428,700, and the interest rate in March of 2022 was 5.78, which is a little bit gracious, I think, at least less than what it is today. But doing that same math, financing $428,700 makes my payment $2,500, $2,510. And the cost of the 30-year loan with that $428,000 repaid is $903,000. So in sum, just from June of 2020 to March of 2022, we are looking at almost double,
right?
Like paying double for a median house.
Yep.
Paying double, paying twice as much, just shy of twice as much. So
those numbers are just scary.
affording a median house for $1,380, and all of a sudden, if I wanted to buy the same house today, having to pay $2,500. That's, what is that? $200 shy of doubling my mortgage payment.
Yeah, I mean, and you would need a major raise at your job just to keep the same lifestyle.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about when this makes sense to go ahead and do it. How, because frankly, I mean, some people are just really intent. They really want to buy a home right now, and we need to work through it. So we have created kind of 5 non-negotiables for buying real estate, and these 5 non-negotiables. There's some things that we will get into further into this, like in the month, and we just need to make sure that you're being very, we want to make it very clear what we're trying to tell you. So we definitely recommend, there's going to be like taking some notes here. The first thing is non-negotiable number 1, due diligence. So first and foremost, stop waiving your appraisal and stop waiving your inspection. Now, we're not saying that you're going to leverage the appraisal and leverage the inspection to reduce the price of the home.
Negotiate.
Like, right. Josh, if you're about to sell me your home, I'm not telling you I want an inspection so I can negotiate the price. I'm telling you I want an inspection so I can know that I'm making a good purchase. So what I'm going to ask for is I'm going to ask for 7 days to get an inspection done. And if that inspection passes, I will buy your home. If it fails, I'll walk away.
You'll walk away.
So I'm not trying to tell you, hey, if you're selling me a $600,000 home and the foundation's cracked, sell it to me for $400,000. Right. I'm just going to say, at that point, I'll either walk away, or if my inspector seems to think it could be really cheap to fix, then I make that decision myself. It's not on you as the seller to meet me in a new price point. It's just giving me the time to understand what I'm purchasing.
Right.
Same thing with the appraisal. I'm not going to get an appraisal for me to tell you to reduce your cost or your sell point. I'm simply saying I need to understand what I'm buying and what it's worth.
Right.
And I want to buy your house. I am going to buy your house, but give me 7 days to make sure these two things are I know the price that it's worth, and I know that it passes an inspection. That's all you're asking. The other piece of that due diligence is kind of going through the other steps to make sure that this is a good purchase. So number 2 gets a little bit, we just want to be really clear on what we're saying, and there's some numbers involved. So take some notes here if you need to.
These are numbers that we use with our clients. It's not necessarily, it's not like the nationwide rule of thumb. It's just, this is what works with our vital signs for our clients.
We always recommend that your gross income, that your mortgage payment. So when we say mortgage payment, we are talking about your principal, your interest, your taxes, and your insurance. So that's PITI, PITI. So your PITI payment should not exceed 28% of your gross income. So we're going to work through this. We're going to make a real simple assumption for simple math. We're going to assume that I make $120,000 a year and I make exactly $10,000 a month gross. Okay? So based on 28%, my mortgage payment for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance should not exceed $2,800 a month. Okay?
And we're also not saying it should be $2,800 a month.
We're just saying it should not exceed.
It shouldn't exceed that.
Okay. Another consideration in debt management here is that my total payments to all of my debt should not exceed 36%.
That's your debt to income.
If I have a $2,800 or 28% mortgage payment, that leaves me about $800 left for things like a car payment, student loans. Maybe I have medical bills in the past. So I might have to pay down some debt so my total debt payment every month does not exceed 36%. All right. So again, my mortgage payment, PITI, should never exceed 28% of my gross income.
Debt to income.
And then my total mortgage my total debt should never exceed 36% of my income payment. That's gross numbers. That's hard to do. That's getting really, really tough to do. And we're going to talk just a little bit more about that. It kind of segues into principle or kind of non-negotiable number 3. But before we get there, one other key piece of this and how we kind of navigate into 28% or less is we're going to leverage a down payment, right? Mm-hmm. So if I need to make a down payment, now typically we say 20% down payment. Why 20%? That's where we kind of get rid of PMI. And it also creates kind of this equity cushion for us right away by moving into a house. It gives us some flexibility in the soon coming years, should life change, something happen. Mm-hmm. So that's important. We also, we'll talk about some wiggle room in that 28% mortgage payment. We also have some wiggle room in the 20% down for first-time home buyers, mm-hmm. right? And ways that you can do that. I mean, there's a lot of programs out there for first-time home buyers. I've bought a house with my VA loan. Mm-hmm. That required you're not required to put anything down. There's FHA. There's all kinds of things that can potentially free you from putting 20% down on your first home. The problem is typically if I put less down, then I'm going to run over that 28% limit mm-hmm. of payment to gross income. So monthly payment to gross income.
And I've seen a lot too, for whatever reason they think if they can get approved for that, 3.5%, 5% down, all of a sudden they're looking for a bigger house.
Right.
A more expensive house.
So if I've been on the boat that I'm going to get to 20% down, so I've been doing the savings. Let's say I've saved, $75,000, mm-hmm. and I want to buy this $750,000 home. So I've saved 10% with the goal of getting to 20, but now I'm just like, man, I need to buy now.
Right.
Well, a couple of things. If you find a program and you're like, oh, well, Brandon and Josh said I could put 3% down, so now $75,000
buys me a bigger
3%,
house.
I can buy this huge house. Yeah. No, we're not saying that.
Yeah.
Because that huge house with only $75,000
takes you way over the 28%.
Your monthly payment is going to be very high, way over 28%. So you have to navigate. This has to kind of all come together. We are saying that you might be able to come below 20% down. Mm-hmm. You might be able to use a program to pay less than 20% down. We also are saying that you might be able to go a little higher than 28% on those monthly payments.
With stipulations.
But there's some really key matter of facts here that kind of bring us into non-negotiable number 3, and that is you have to know where your financial vital signs are. Mm. So in our program, we monitor 12 financial mm-hmm. vital signs, and we're going to put it together for you here. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is how this works as an ecosystem. So if I'm going to put less than 20% down, then I have to understand that I'm going to have less equity. So my balance sheet, mm-hmm. right? My net worth statement is going to have more debt for the asset that I'm purchasing, right? So that can be problematic if something happens in life and I need to sell this house quickly. If the price of the asset comes down a little bit, but my mortgage hasn't come down quite as much, I'm upside down.
You're upside down, yeah.
Right? So it kind of might lock me into this house, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. And then also if I decide, hey, again, I'm making $10,000 a month. I really want this, but my pity payment is going to be $3,000. So that's 30% of my income. Can I do that? Is that okay? Well, how do my other financial vital signs look? So one thing I have to first question, that if you were coming to me asking me this and we were sitting across the table from one another, I would say, what does your income currently look like? and how much is your income going to be in the future? And I'm looking for some really honest conversations. Yep. So if you just started a new business and you have some really great trajectory and you have some great, product that you're selling, then we might say, hey, you're obviously not making your potential income right now because it's brand new.
But in 2 or 3 years.
So maybe we could go over 28%.
Is there a road to get you back in that 28%?
We see this a lot in doctors, their lawyers, first couple years out of school.
Dentists.
Not making quite what they're going to. So we see this quite often where we kind of say, totally understand that your earnings capacity is way higher.
Right. And you might be at 30% at this
for
stage.
A year or two. Yeah. And then next year or the year after, all of a sudden your income is higher, so now you're not at 30% anymore, you're below 28%.
But the most important thing is there a road? Can you have an honest conversation with yourself, and is there a road to that your income's going to increase and you can lower that?
Yeah, and we
28%.
Yeah, I mean we can sometimes write off, there's certain benchmarks for some people, like I think about policemen, firefighters, teachers, where they're not getting major raises.
Right.
And sometimes if you hit a 10-year point or something like that.
Well, heck, even if you get a master's as a teacher, the raise is not as much as you think it
should
be.
So yeah, they're very underpaid. But the point is their salary is more set, so it's harder to justify going
over
35%. Right. They're kind of stuck where they're at.
Yep.
So
you want to be tighter to that number.
That being said,
that's just one
understanding your income is important. But then the other question becomes, if I'm going to go from 28% to my mortgage payment to 35%, where does that other 7% now? Where does it come from?
Yeah, what other vital signs?
Am I pulling it? Yeah. If I'm pulling it from my savings rate, that's not good. It's really not okay to forego our own saving for our future, because that's part of a plan.
Right.
I'm saving because I want X, Y, and Z later in life. And so if I stop saving 7% a year, or 7% so I can pay for a higher mortgage payment, then I have to be able to write off those
that plan
goals.
Like, are you willing to do that to impact your retirement plan? Like, I'm talking about overall, like if you want to retire at 50, but now you buy a house that
exactly increases, that's what I'm saying. You have to be able to line through some of these major goals to be able to.
Are you willing to
justify
sacrifice
the purchase?
Yeah.
And so that's problematic if we're having to pull from somewhere else. One example where, if I'm looking at my 12 financial vital signs, I want to get into this house that is 30% on my, on that. It's a $3,000 payment on my $10,000 income. It is 30%, but by going from 28 to 30, my taxes are going to go from 20% to 15 or 18 because of my mortgage interest that I can now deduct. And so in that sense, it is justifiable to go to 30 because I'm saving some money in my tax rate. So I'm just moving it. I'm not like, and that doesn't affect my
your vital
net worth.
signs are staying. You're just moving.
Yeah, we're not taking it from my net worth. We're not taking it from my savings plan. We're not taking it from my liquidity. We're taking it. So instead of paying Uncle Sam this 2%, I'm going to put it into my house.
Yep.
And that interest that's created will now be potentially be a write-off for my taxes. Yep. So there are ways that you can say this can work. It's just if I go to my financial vital signs and realize, hey, I'm going to have this great RT score, but in order to get into it, I have to pull some extra money to put down, and my liquid term score is now very minimal. Well, what happens if I get in the house, I got no liquid money, and the roof caves in? Where do I go? I've put myself in a position that now the only place that I can go is my qualified money, and I'm going to have to pay penalty and taxes potentially to fix my own roof.
Right.
So the bottom line is when you're using our planning app and you're sitting there and you're looking at these 12 financial vital signs, you'll be able to understand the decision you're making about potentially spending more on a total mortgage are potentially putting more money down or less money down, and how that affects your monthly payments, and how that monthly payments compared to your income is within a healthy or unhealthy percentage range, and how if I choose to be a little bit unhealthy, pay a little bit more for my monthly payment, then where is it impacting on these other financial vitals? It's an ecosystem, and I think it's really, really important to see that as an entire ecosystem.
And that's the great thing about our vital signs. They're so easy to see and understand. If you do X and Y, Z is going to happen.
Yeah.
And you can see it right in front of your face. Super easy to use.
So moving on, and we kind of prepped this just a second ago. Another non-negotiable for us is consider your time horizon. Guys, understand, like it is okay to rent. It is okay. Like it is not for everybody to buy. It is not for everybody right now to buy. Mm-hmm. And there will always be property for sale. Like there's this notion that we're just going to like run out of property for people. It's just the market will be the market. You might pay a little bit more down the road, but there will be accessible property for us to buy, at least for the rest of our lives if we're listening on this call. And so I think that with that said, you have to understand, like sometimes it's okay to rent. If you cannot be in your house for 5 to 7 years, don't buy.
Right.
Right. And that's kind of a weird anomaly to think, like what we're living in now. I could buy a house and sell it next month for a profit.
Right.
That is not normal.
It's not normal.
It is absolutely not normal. The reality is, if you look back at that chart, that 2007 to like 2011, your home price was lower than what you purchased it for if you bought in 2006 or 7 for like 5 years.
Right.
And so the reality is you have to be prepared to be stuck in the home that you're in. And that doesn't work for some people.
Right.
Some people have jobs where you have to relocate or you lose your job. Well, if I relocate, I have to sell my house. I'm upside down, so I can't sell my house. But if I say no to moving, then I'm going to lose my job. Then I can't afford my mortgage.
Right.
So you're putting yourself in a bad situation if you don't give yourself the appropriate time horizon when purchasing a house. And just understand this whole notion of buying now and having equity next month in my house
is not normal.
Is not normal. There's costs that go into selling your home. You got real estate agent fees. You got all these titling fees. You have all kinds of costs associated with selling. So even if you buy a $500,000 home, you probably need to sell it for at least $550,000 to $600,000 just to be break even, so to speak.
Yeah,
right?
There's a ton of fees.
There's a lot of
commissions,
fees,
and
so it creates an illiquid thing. And it's just not normal that a $500,000 home is worth $550,000 next month, even though it's kind of our current reality in some places. So just know that is not normal. Ask yourself, what if the value drops? Am I okay? Can I navigate this? And that really feeds into number 5 is the non-negotiable. You have to have a plan for a worst case scenario. Now, not a worst case like zombie apocalypse, but a worst case realistic possibility. Again, kind of what we just talked about. What happens if I have to move early? What happens if the housing prices do come down? Can I be okay being stuck here for 5-7 years?
If you have
I need
two kids or 3 kids, life transitions, you outgrow the house.
Well, yeah. I mean, what happens if me and my spouse are young and we buy this house thinking it's a great house for us, and then all of a sudden over the course of a few years we have 2 kids. What's the chances of me outgrowing this house before that 5 to 7 year time frame? So we're not talking like doomsday.
It's not
terrible
bad, all
things.
bad stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a growing family is arguably a great thing. But the question when it comes in terms to what do I do with my house? What if my home value has gone down and I've outgrown my house, or circumstances of life has changed, I need to move? These are just things to ask yourself. So you want to prepare for that realistic worst case scenario and have a plan. So if I've done my due diligence,
that goes right back to our vital signs, going back to a savings, emergency savings rate.
Wildly important. So if I've done my due diligence, if I understand how my mortgage is going to affect my, am I under 28% of gross income? Is my total debt payment less than 36% of my gross income? if I understand that by breaking either of these rules by a little bit, putting less down, or maybe I'm paying slightly more than 20%, because that's kind of what you have to do right now. If I'm going to do either one of those things, I'm trying not to do them both, but if I have to do one, how will that affect the rest of my vital signs? Can I still save what I need to save to make sure all my other goals are accomplished?
And do
I still have liquidity? Do I still have my emergency savings? Do I still have a way to navigate emergencies? Do I have all this considered? If I can satisfy the notion that I will live in a house for 5 to 7 years, if I have that kind of time horizon, even if the values come down and I get stuck, if I've considered a realistic worst case scenario or multiple realistic worst case scenarios, and have a pre-planned to navigate those, if I've done all those things, then we can talk about buying that house. Right. I think those are the non-negotiable things that have to get done. So we're at like about 38 minutes now. So we definitely want to wrap this up. But I would also just say, if you're not navigating right now, if you're seriously interested in buying a home and you're not feeling a little bit anxious or nervous, you're probably just not paying attention to the actual
to the reality of what's going on.
But I would also say, like, if you are getting into a situation where you're putting an offer down, and you're feeling a little bit bullied, or you're feeling a little bit rushed, or you're feeling like you're scared,
talking yourself into it,
you really got to stop for a second and just go back to what the gut says, listen to the gut. Yep. And if it's time to just kind of walk away, to pause it, if you need to talk more about this, if you want to get into our financial planning program so you can understand your vital signs to say, hey, is this a good decision or not? Like, just pause for a second. Reach out to us. Reach out to somebody. There's a lot of people. I will say this. There are some incredible real estate agents, incredible lenders. There are people that have insane amounts of knowledge and wisdom. Just make sure they're giving you the information you need, not the information they need to give you to get some revenue.
And a non-biased. You want a non-biased point of view.
Yeah. And really you just got to navigate that carefully. Because there are some incredible people that will give you very tailored information to you, regardless of the outcome for them. Find those people, hide under their wings. We are happy. We love diversifying into real estate. So if you work, there's a lot of financial planners out there that just want all the money in the market. That's not us. We love real estate diversification. We just think that there's very intelligent ways to get there. And we definitely think there are some, these 5 non-negotiables that you have to vet, you have to work through. Even if the market was completely different and interest rates were low and prices were low, we would still want you to use these 5 non-negotiables as a vetting system to work through to get to the end state of, should I buy, yes or no? Parting thoughts, any final words?
Just check out our website at harpethwealthpartners.com. Check out our health and wellness program.
Yep. All right.
Give us a call, email.
Yep. Check us out. Talk to you soon. Send us ideas, questions, concerns, thoughts that you want us to talk about. We want this to be super relevant to you, and we will do the homework to get you guys the best answers we possibly can. So until next time, be well. We hope you learned from our conversation today. It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes and not intended to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you and you have questions of how it might be applicable to your specific situation, please reach out to your financial professional. Of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you regarding specific questions or applications to your individual financial situation. With that, here are a few disclosures. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. With that, thank you, and we look forward to having you back. Take care.